Tom Pelissero, who's my colleague from the NFL Media Group, who joins us now from the owners' meetings in the Metroplex in the state of Texas. How are you, Tom?
I'm fantastic, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right. I'll give you the floor. Your response to all that is what?
Well, first of all, I would say I'm not doubling down on anything. I would just simply say that right now we are picking at semantics regarding certain things that I reported in a story that was not a story about an argument with Marvin Jones. That was one sentence in a much broader story about the environment in Jacksonville. If you go back and you listen to Urban Meyer's press conference on Sunday after the game, he actually confirms a great deal of what I had reported. He acknowledged that Marvin Jones was upset about repeated criticism of the wide receiver group. He said that they had a conversation. I referred to it as an argument, which is how it was described to me. Again, that's a semantic difference. You can ask my wife about that. I'm sure we've disagreed on that before. The other detail that I had not seen Urban asked about was Marvin Jones not being in the facility at one point because he was so upset. That is absolutely accurate. There's, of course, the benching of James Robinson and the details there where Urban has, said it was injury related, then said he's not involved and it's the assistant coaches, when in fact he was the one who ordered the benching and kept James Robinson out of the game. It was only when Trevor Lawrence intervened that Robinson went back in. And then there's the staff meeting, which Urban denies calling his assistant coaches losers. Again, we're into a semantic territory here because he also, again, noted immediately after that he, yes, is very hard on coaches and very demanding. The message in the meeting, regardless of what he called and how he used certain words, the message of the meeting was he's a winner, the assistant coaches are losers, and he emphasized this in the meeting by going around the room, pointing at each coach and saying, have you won? And he did not mean that rhetorically. He wanted an answer, and guys had to uncomfortably defend themselves and their resumes. And, Rich, I can't tell you how many people within the league from every different position, from head coaches to assistant coaches, front office people, other media members, have called me since then. And I ask all the coaches in particular, is this normal? And everyone says no, they've never heard of anything like that. But it's not about one argument or conversation. It's not about one staff meeting. It is about the way that fits into the pattern in a pervasively negative environment that, quite frankly, is unlike anything that I've heard in my close to 20 years covering the NFL.
Well, and that's something I mentioned on this show yesterday is how everybody talks. I've never been around a group of people quite like football people who talk. Everybody talks. Everybody chatters and jibber jabbers or jive turkeys or what have you, to use the Harbaugh phrase, right, or gobble gobbles, quite like NFL people. And the thing that jumped out at me as well off of your piece from over the weekend that was just remarkable, I had to read it twice, to be honest with you, Tom, was that Jaguar players unburdened themselves to Rams players in Los Angeles after losing to them. And that's the way players talk. I totally believe that. That is something that happens all the time. So that's what you heard, that Jaguar players unburden themselves to Rams players like you have no idea what's going on around here. Pretty much.
Well, and in fact, too, yes, I was told that, and that was in the story that, Jaguars players were basically telling Rams players the same thing that I've heard, throughout the course of the offseason, which is Urban Meyer does not treat them like, adults. In many cases, guys who have kids, have families. He's still kind of approaching them like they're 19-year-old college kids. And in fact, I also got many calls over the weekend from agents of Jaguars players who all said, number one, everything in that story is accurate as far as players know. And number two, it's just scratching the surface. And in fact, I had one prominent agent tell me that the same thing happened after the Tennessee game, which was a Jaguars player came up to one of his players on the Titans and was saying, get me out of here. Now, that happens with losing. Okay. Let's kind of level set here. Anytime that you're 2-11, there's going to be some, casting blame, and there's going to be some griping and complaining, and everybody just wants the season to be over. One of the things that is unique in Jacksonville is Urban Meyer, when he speaks publicly, often is casting blame on whether it's the players or his assistant coaches. And that's not going over well. That's one of the things that was upsetting for Marvin Jones, has been upsetting for other players, is they feel like they're getting blamed and aired out publicly when there's, quite clearly some institutional things that are not in line with what people expect an NFL program to be.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. And the other, I guess, outlier or difference, because you're right. I mean, when teams are 2-11, players are always saying, "Get me out of here. This is terrible." U-Haul, Dion taught me that phrase years and years and years ago, that the U-Haul's backed up, that players are done. They're essentially want to get out and they're ready to back the U-Haul up and go home. And the Jaguars are playing U-Haul games right now. And the difference is also is a coach with an absolute sterling winning record, right, coming in. And I say that just in terms of wins and losses. We know that there's always been baggage of note regarding Urban Meyer at his college stops. But, I mean, there's no question this guy is a winner. The guy puts W's on the board and hangs banners and beats alma maters like mine, repeatedly. So he's not used to it. We're not used to talking about him this way. And then, of course, there's this sense of the Jaguars saying, how is he not that guy still? So what's the next steps here in that regard? Tom, what's happening there right now?
Well, Jaguars owner Shad Khan addressed the coaching staff yesterday, told them to tighten up, no more leaks. The fact that I'm telling you that happened would indicate that those efforts may not be entirely successful.
Wow. Okay.
He also spoke to reporters, I believe on his yacht last night, celebrating his 10-year anniversary as the Jaguars owner. And if
Today.
you read the quotes, some of which are on NFL.com right now, it's certainly not a strong endorsement. It's very much they're going to evaluate things. They're not used to having drama surrounding the Jaguars. In fact, Shad is somebody who I have a great deal of respect for. One of the great success stories and how he came up making his fortune in the car bumper business. Truly self-made and so impressive in many ways. But he was joking about the fact that normally it's just, the lowly Jaguars, they're bad and everybody leaves us alone. Whereas in this case, there's a heightened focus and there is drama, which is something that they're not accustomed to. One quote also that jumped out at me was he said, "This roster is much better than winning 2 games," which is a pretty clear indication that he believes they should not be 2-11 right now. And if the roster is not the problem, that infers that coaching must be at least a part of the issue that they have right now. So I would entirely expect that there's going to be a thorough evaluation of everything going on. Again, based on Shad's background and his history in the NFL, he is inclined to give people time. Gus Bradley got into a 4th season, despite all the losing that they did with a young rebuilding team. Doug Marrone was around for 4 full seasons. Obviously had the one run to the AFC Championship game. And then, but the overall record was not great, but they would, exercise patience there. The question that Shad Khan and the people advising him have to answer is, can it get better with Urban Meyer as the head coach? Because one of the challenges that they're going to have is they've already had significant staff turnover going back to the offseason when his hand-picked strength and conditioning coach resigned after some racial comments from his days at Iowa resurfaced. His special teams coordinator had to take a leave of absence, did not return. His chief of staff just left for the University of Texas. There's a report that his tight ends coach is taking another job. I am personally aware of multiple assistants who are actively looking for other jobs because under no circumstances do they want to return. Are you going to be able to get good coaches to come down there? Are there people who trust Urban Meyer enough to go in and fill those roles? And there's also agents who say, it's going to be hard. They're not going to be able to get free agents. Money and no state income tax generally can fix at least some of that.
Right.
But in terms of program building, just with the environment that's created there, they're going to have some challenges, and they've got to figure out, and Shad's got to make a determination, can Urban Meyer be the guy to fix it?
Well, and then there's the question about Trevor Lawrence, right? And if Tom... we're having Tom Pelissero, NFL Network here on the Rich Eisen Show. If we're having a conversation about which, insanely successful person from the collegiate level can have that translate into the pros, and who's more likely to have that right now, you'd have to say it's still Trevor Lawrence over the coach. And the question is what is Trevor Lawrence thinking? And what is the general sense of his development? And what is he getting out of the relationship with a coach, again, who brought an immense resume with him from the collegiate level? What's that conversation like right now, do you think, internally or at all, Tom?
That is a fantastic question, and
Thank
another
you.
important one that Shad Khan is going to need to answer in the weeks to come. What we know is that, again, Trevor Lawrence had to get involved in a situation where one of their best players was on the sideline and had to, in essence, put him back into the game himself. Also said publicly, something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm the one on the field. I'm the one who sees where all the pieces are. He's one of our best players, and he needs to be in the game. That's not a common thing that you hear from a rookie quarterback, and I don't think that Trevor Lawrence meant anything negative by it, but he's clearly feeling like he needs to take further ownership over what's going on offensively. They had a terrible game against Tennessee. They got shut out. Over the past 7 games, they've scored 64 points, which is the fewest in 7 games in Jaguars history. And that is not exactly a franchise history filled with juggernaut offenses. So they're bad right now. And you have to, look into that. Is it, as simple as Urban Meyer, fires the whole offensive coaching staff? I mean, that is one potential option, I'm sure. But then who are you going to get? Who is going to want to come in to a place where, go all the way back to the preseason? And after the second preseason game, Urban Meyer, in a staff meeting, threatened everyone's jobs. Said he's sick of being embarrassed. After 2 preseason losses, he's sick of being embarrassed. And if they don't start winning immediately, a lot of these guys will not be back next year. That was the first moment that, as much as there had been signs of it through the offseason, really shook some people at the time in terms of, is he going to understand how this works in the NFL? And at the time, people made the point to me that, hey, he was brought in because he's, hard charging. He's going to turn around the program. Yeah, he's hard on people, but we need that. It's been a losing organization for so long. It just seems to have taken on a different context as the season has gone along here. And again, when you're talking about changes or what can fix it, okay, it's one thing to say, well, we're going to get rid of these people. Can you bring in good people to replace them, knowing that, if nothing else, it's very apparent that if Urban Meyer gets a second season, he is in no way guaranteed a third.
So when does Shad Khan show up at the owners' meeting? Is that today when he'll be there? And I'm sure all the cameras will be...
Yeah, likely tomorrow. Okay. Today is the labor seminar, which is where they do the salary cap projection. And, so it's a lot of the salary cap people here. I have not seen, I don't believe, a single owner. It starts late morning tomorrow, so a lot of guys will take their private jets in the morning and be here. So it'll be an interesting, it'll be an interesting day, to say the least.
Yeah, of course, Tom. Because I mean, if Shad's saying we're not used to this sort of scrutiny and conversation being had surrounding our football team, I proffer to say that even with this being, I guess, a home game for Jerry Jones, the owner that's going to have the most cameras trained on him is going to be Shad Khan. There's no question about that. Come Wednesday,
Jerry will find the cameras.
No, that's true too.
I'm not too concerned for him.
And so then, is Vegas getting a Super Bowl out of this meeting? Is that the major headline to be coming out of what this meeting would be for the ownership?
Yes, and that's been assumed for some time. I believe it's after the 2023 season, and they'll take a vote. My understanding is it's a ceremonial vote. Las Vegas, like everywhere that builds a new stadium, you generally get a Super Bowl within the next 5 years. There's been some movement because of different issues going on, including when the league extended the regular season. One Super Bowl that was supposed to be in New Orleans got pushed back into Mardi Gras, which was kind of a non-starter for the NFL,
right,
which is what opened up this particular Super Bowl for the Raiders. So, yes, that's the full expectation is it'll be a Las Vegas Super Bowl, which should be quite the spectacle in a couple of years.
And then the last thing that I saw you were reporting on with our colleague and friend Mike Garafolo, that the league is mandating Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees to get a booster shot by 2 days after Christmas. Otherwise, they'll no longer be considered fully vaccinated by the NFL. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Tier 1 and Tier 2 staff is covering, Tier 1 staff includes coaches. It includes anybody who's working directly with players. Tier 2, the access is slightly different, but again, it's people who can be around players. So in essence, players are not required to get a booster shot at this time. That's something that they would have to be talking with the union with in terms of updating the COVID protocols, and that may happen, at some point. But players are not, required to get vaccinated, period, as of now. So I don't anticipate there's going to be any kind of a mandate. Not during the 2021 season, certainly. But, the vast majority of coaches are vaccinated at this point. So don't anticipate a ton of ripple effects. I think it's like 99-point-something% of all staff is vaccinated. But it's a reflection of what happened within the league yesterday. I mean, the fact that you had 36 players go on the COVID lists, which is double the largest number in 2 years of these protocols that have ever gone on in a single day in the season. It's a reflection of where you're at right now in terms of the United States. The NFL, based upon their data, and they do genomic sequencing and whatnot to figure out, exactly how virus came in, what strains there are, is it being passed within the facility, is it not? And like 5 out of every that they've seen over the season have been from community spread. So, the other thing to anticipate, and not to take a completely dark turn here, Rich, but generally speaking, when you see spikes in the positivity rate for professional sports leagues, that usually means that the rest of the country is a couple weeks behind from a similar spike. The reason being because professional sports leagues are one of the only places where you regularly test asymptomatic individuals. So if they're catching these cases, even among fully vaccinated individuals, what that tells you is there's probably a lot of people walking around this country right now who have COVID and may be spreading it and don't know it because they're not getting regularly tested. And so this is all going to be, I know there's going to be a presentation here at the league meetings about what that means. It's been full steam ahead. They have not rescheduled a single game through the course of this season. There are protocols and procedures in place if that happens. But at this point, the NFL fully intends to play this season on time and have the Super Bowl on time in Los Angeles in February.
Tom, appreciate the time and your excellent reporting and your 2 cents. Let's do this again sometime soon. You be safe.
Anytime, Rich. Thanks.
That's Tom Pelissero. I follow him on Twitter. You should as well, at Tom Pelissero here on The Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.